Oh, hi. Mark Pearson, Executive and Artistic Director of the College Light Opera Company. Welcome to Off the Clock, a weekly show where I get to interview CLOC alums. Off the Clock is made possible by a generous gift from Hope Lincoln Baker. This week, I got to catch up with a couple of very talented costumers and two of my favorite people, Sasha Richter and Anna Light. Let's hear what they had to say. So I'm thrilled to have the two of you, two of my favorite people, here today to talk with us on Off the Clock, Sasha Richter and Anna Light. Welcome.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
So let's give everyone a little bit of a background. Maybe Anna, we'll start with you. When were you here? When were you at CLOC?
I was at CLOC I wrote it down, 2005 and 6. And I came for half of a summer in 2007.
And what did you do while you were at CLOC?
I was the costume shop manager. And this was when you were the costume designer. Yeah, long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And tell everyone what you do now.
Now I work for the New York City Ballet as a draper in New York. Pretty much year round, that's what I do. Mm-hmm.
And just for some of our audience, what does that mean? What does a draper do?
I'm the pattern maker for the primarily women's costumes, but men also, for the ballet. So when we are rebuilding old costumes or building new costumes, I do the pattern making, the fitting. I oversee our staff of stitchers who put the costumes together. I help in some design decisions, but primarily I'm like a contractor. I'm not a designer. I do the making, not the designing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Sasha, when, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier because it was a bit of a mystery, but when were you at CLOC?
So I've had many friends be here along the way, and Mark, I assisted him in college. So that's our connection. And there was a summer, I think it was 2009, I was in between a show that I was working on in the city. I started in Boardwalk Empire, that started my career in film, and we take a hiatus every year, and it was like, because the show was on for 5 seasons, so it would be like a 4-month hiatus, and it happened to be during the summer, and there was like time for me to volunteer for about 3 weeks, and I came out then. And then I'm here now helping out, going through the attic and helping out everyone who's already started an amazing process at CLOC of reorganizing things. So.
Great. So can you tell everyone a little bit about what you do now as a career?
So right now I'm a key costumer. I work in TV and film. A key costumer is the person who works below a supervisor and closely with designers, and I arrive in a truck every day on location to set. And the truck is a mini costume shop. And when we arrive, I have everything prepared for the day. We go through things. There might be fittings the day of. It feels kind of ramshackle when you explain it, but there is a lot of method to it. But I've had a lot of incarnations in film of what my job has been. So, but that's presently what I do. And I've been a key customer for about the last 3 years, but I've been in film since 2009. So.
Great. And I suppose we should mention that the two of you know each other. Isn't that correct, Anna?
Yeah, we've known each other. Well, we all went to Boston University together. I met, Sasha first or Mark first? I don't remember. Sasha first. Sasha was a freshman when I was a senior. And then Mark, you came my sophomore year? Yes. Yeah, so we've all known each other since the early aughts. So it's been a while now, right? Coming up,
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And have the two of you worked together outside of CLOC, or is it just a friendship?
Oh no, we've worked together. Oh yeah, no, we worked together a few times on a movie. I helped you build some costumes for an opera you did. Do you remember, Sasha, the Christmas one? What was that? What was it called?
That was the play of Daniel. It was at the Met Cloister. So that was the year after I graduated and came out here. Not here, to New York. I did a big medieval thing in the beautiful chapel that's at the Met Cloisters. And Anna and I put that together. I did not pay her enough money to do it, but that is what friendship is. That is Ladies Who Sew. We helped each other. My most favorite Annalite helping me story is I did a movie down in North Carolina, and I called her up and I said, how can I get you down here? She was living in Pennsylvania at the time, right outside of Philadelphia. And I was like, what can I do to get you and your baby down here? I'll rent you the biggest SUV. I'll do whatever you need to get all your dresses down here. I just need someone who does beautiful work and can make us beautiful dresses in a very short amount of time. And Anna was like, well, think about it. Call me back in an hour. Actually, her husband answered the phone and said that Anna's busy trying to figure out how she's going to do this. And a day later, Anna arrived with a SUV full of dress forms and sewing machines and her mom and her baby, and worked for us like for 2 weeks straight, solid, in the mountains, the Shenandoah Mountains, making us beautiful dresses.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked for you for 1 week. It was like, we worked like 23 hours a day. It was one of the most, I can't believe I forgot that, Sasha, because it was insane. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Like, I love getting calls where it's like, quick, come, there's an emergency. And I'm like, let's do it. And we just like throw everything in a car and drive 12 hours. It was really fun. Yeah.
So what I think is interesting about having the two of you on this call is, though your academic background is pretty similar, you both went into different industries. So that be, live performing theater and film. So I thought maybe it'd be fun to talk a little bit about the similarities, but also the differences between those two industries. Sasha, do you want to start us off?
Well, I sort of started out, I was doing theater when I first arrived in New York. But it was like small shows, and it was just like a little bit of a struggle as like a designer. So I was like, I'm going to be a designer and this is what I'm going to do. And I was kind of struggling, and I was like, really what I did is I just met up with people I had met either here at CLOC or people that I had met at Boston University who, it was like long shots, but I was like, I'll buy you a drink and can we go out and we can talk, and, just any advice that you can give me, I would love. And I got started, like someone who told someone was like, they need someone to dust off hats at this show. And I was like, what show? And they were like, Boardwalk Empire. And I was like, I don't know what that is, because I work in theater, and I wasn't really headed in the film genre. So when I got there, I started it literally was sort of this thing that snowballed. I was only supposed to be there for a few weeks, which is sort of the theme of my life maybe, and everyone's life in this is to go by the seat of your pants and figure it out.
And maybe we should pause there. Maybe we should pause there a moment to talk about how all of us actually are very skilled in the art of hat making and why that is.
Well, so the cool thing I will say about Boston University, and then being places like this, is you have to know the entire skill set. You have to be able to do this. Just you want to be a designer, you should know how to make a hat. You should know how to make a dress. You should, even if you think you don't know how to do it, just toggle it together. You know what I mean? And then you can learn it too. You can research I didn't have an iPhone then at the time, so I was just sort of figuring it out and calling people. But Denise Wallace at Boston University was our millinery teacher, who's amazing. And she gave us all this incredible skill set to really make a full costume. How do you make a full costume without a beautiful headpiece or a hat or, crafts or anything like that? So we're all lucky that we had a technical training as well as design, so yeah.
So then you were at Boardwalk Empire, and you probably thought that was just a one-off. And then what happened after that?
So when I came, actually, it was because of the profile, all the pictures of all the work that I had made. So one thing I will say, take pictures of everything you make, especially now that everyone has an iPhone and you can take a beautiful picture. Make sure you just have it on a white wall or a gray wall or something that like can showcase what you've made. Put it on a head form, put it on a dress form, do whatever, have those photos. You'll be shocked how much it impresses people, the work that you have created and done. Because to us, we're like, you know, when you're here at CLOC doing like 9 shows in 9 weeks, wild, you know what I mean? And you don't think what you're doing is like extraordinary, but it's extraordinary. It really is. Like, that's amazing. And especially to other people, whether you're in film or theater or whatever, they see that. I mean, I arrived with my big giant portfolio, which is a little embarrassing looking back on it, because now you should have your iPad and like, you know, show people on an iPad. And the 2 designers at the time were like, we should have her just make something for us. We don't know if we have a full-time position for her, but like, let's have her make stuff for us. So I was like making things for them in the night, coming in and cleaning up the old hats. And I remember there was a very good friend of mine, Chris Peterson, who's a designer who does like awesome work, was like, I want you to, there's always work. Look at a job like this way. There's always work. He's like, I never want to see you not have a hat in your hand. And that is my motto for life. It's like, if you have skill, don't be afraid to tell people that you have that skill. And I think that that's sort of most of my friends who work in film or theater or whatever it is, it's like, oh, that corner's messy, I'm going to clean that. I think that's like the philosophy. Never not have a hat in your hand is sort of like never be useful. There's so many things to constantly be useful for. And then those relationships, you never know who you're going to meet on a job or something you're doing who's going to be like, oh my gosh, she was there and she was supposed to be there for do this one thing, but she was in the corner dusting, cleaning out this thing and making these hats. And then we just kept her forever, you know, like it's just, I don't know. It's sort of, it's a cool thing about this industry because people really do, like the arts in general, they do appreciate really hard work. I don't know.
Great. And so did you ever, after Boardwalk, did you go back into live theater, or did you pretty much fall in love with working in film?
I guess it sort of became like a thing where I just went from the next thing to the next thing. And it luckily afforded me the ability to work with people who were doing small theater projects. So I have been able to help out friends and been like, I can costume design that in the month I have between off my next show I'm doing or the next, you know, week. I can sit down and do these things for you. So there, I always feel like I have like a hand in it, you know, which is something that I love. And I always kind of tell people, I'm like, if you like love theater, like a great way to pay your bills is film. And then you can still stay in theater and like do it the way that you want to do it, you know?
Gotcha. That's great advice. Anna, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just were you always interested in dance and dance costume, or how did that career end up coming about?
I didn't. Actually, when I applied for the job at New York City Ballet, I've been there since 2012. I took a little break in between when I had my son in 2015. But no, I left Boston University. I worked briefly at Boston College as the costume shop manager. Then I worked at DeSales University as the costume shop manager, which is a tiny little school in Pennsylvania. And then I moved to New York shortly after I got married because my husband had a job in New York. So we moved to New York. And I was working for a tiny little theater called The Pearl, which doesn't exist anymore. They closed. And through that, I had heard that they were looking for a Draper at New York City Ballet. I can't even remember who told me. A friend of a friend. Actually, a friend, Polly Fossey, who went to Boston University, I think had told me that the job was open. I applied and heard nothing, which is typical. I mean, a lot of times you'll apply somewhere and you'll just radio silence. Then I happened to be at Polly Fossey's housewarming party where she was friends with the shopper for the New York City Ballet. Polly connected me and Tracy, and I said, oh, hi, Tracy, I'm Anna Light. I actually applied for a job with as a Draper there. You know, this was 3 or 4 months ago. This was a while ago. And Tracy was like, I can't believe they haven't filled that job. That's crazy. I'm going to go in on Monday morning and I'm going to tell them that I met you and that they should interview you. And she did. And I got a call on Monday, Anna, can you come in for an interview? And I was really nervous because I hadn't really done any dance. I'd done a little bit of dance design and building when I was at DeSales University, they had a dance department, and I was in charge of designing and making the costumes for those productions, but it was small, small, small. So I was like, literally didn't really even know anything about ballet costumes. I got in there, I had an interview, and they hired me on, I believe, like a 2-week trial, which was nerve-wracking. And I got in there the first day, I was like, hi, I'm Anna. And my boss gave me like a bunch of leotards to cut out, unitards, sew. I didn't have to sew them. I turned them over to our stitchers to sew them. But which was mostly at the time some lovely, I came to find out, but very intimidating Eastern European women who have been there for 20 something years. And that's really where I cut my teeth. And I just learned on the job. I learned as much as I could when I was there. I listened. I was just a sponge. I came with I don't know, what's the word? I didn't think too highly of myself. I was ready to just take it in. I don't know what that is, inhibition or whatever. I was just like, tell me everything. If I'm doing it wrong, tell me. I didn't take anything personally. And then I stayed. And so now I've been there like since 2012, basically, with a little bit of time off. But I really love it now. It's a very specialized skill, but it's beautiful work. And it's lovely to work there. I enjoy it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you've learned are the differences with a dance costume and a regular costume?
Well, pretty much, I mean, obviously you have to move. I mean, in regular costume, you have to move also. There's musical theater, you have to move and stuff. But for dance specifically, I mean, you're putting your body through all kinds of gyrations and up and down and lifts and all that kind of stuff. So you have to build things not only very structurally sound, but they need to be flexible. So there are certain techniques we learned in particularly making ballet costumes, a lot of stretch, a lot of hidden stretch panels, like under the arms and the side seams. There's hidden stretch in the armpits. There's stretch in the crotches of pants. There's stretch. So that'll let dancers move around in ways they need to. But a lot of times, sometimes it's just knowing how to pattern a garment so that it can move that way. We make all of our men's pants, you know, if men need to be in a tuxedo or a suit or something on stage, we make them out of regular old wool, sometimes with a little stretch, sometimes not, but it's knowing how to cut, for example, like cutting crotches really high so that you can lift your leg and get it up over your head and you're not going to bust your pants, you know. A lot of our tutus are made without any stretch fabrics whatsoever. They're all woven or bobinette. They're like netting, you know, like tulle or bobinette has a little air in the fabric. So you just learn how to we stack the fabrics in opposite directions so they're strong, but they have a little bit of give. So you just learn the techniques that you need. And again, it's the wealth of information at the ballet that I just learned completely on the job, which is different than going to school. We learned a lot at Boston University, definitely. But I didn't learn the first thing about making a tutu or how to pattern it or what to do. I learned all that when I got there at the ballet. So yeah, there's a lot of things, you know, coming out with a costume degree or working in a costume shop or working at a theater or regional theater or something like that, even on Broadway, but it doesn't always prepare you for like every iteration of making a costume everywhere. So
was there any, did you have any preconceived notions about ballet in general that changed? You know, I think we all have images of industries like that, and you're inside that image. Was there anything that surprised you or that you learned?
I guess I sort of thought maybe ballerinas would be a little, you know, have a prima donna kind of an attitude, the kind of the way you think a prima donna opera singer would be. They're not. Most ballet dancers are just absolutely delightful and lovely. I mean, you always encounter a performer, an actor who's maybe a little more difficult than others, and we certainly have one or two at the New York City Ballet, but we've learned how to deal with them. And you learn unfortunately, it's hard to say. There are 2 Drapers at the New York City Ballet, and there's one principal ballerina, who will not she only wants me to dress her and pattern for her and be in fittings with her. There's another Draper there. She doesn't attend to that dancer. I do her things. So you have to navigate these and I'm very close friends with my Draper, my co-Draper. And it's awkward when somebody comes in and is like, I only want to see Anna, or I only want to see another person, or I don't like this, or I want to do something else. You have to navigate those personal relationships in a way that it keeps everybody happy and keeps morale. But
I think this is a really interesting point that maybe a lot of folks don't realize or know about the particulars of being a costumer versus any other design industry, and it is incredibly intimate. Sasha, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that and your experience as in film, because I know you've had a lot of that work.
Yeah, it was interesting when you were saying that, because I think that truly is the best advice. It's like being a doctor, and honestly, if you are comfortable with people, they will be comfortable with you. And even if there are times in my life where, I've done a lot of nudity stuff. I was on an HBO show called The Deuce, and that was a huge learning curve for me. And I did not know a lot of that stuff. And a lot of that stuff
can you tell people what The Deuce is, so we have some context there?
Yeah. So it's a show, and I had actually done nudity in like other shows, but like nothing compared to this. It was a show about the how the porn industry evolved in New York City between like 1972, I think is when the show starts, and then it ends up into being the 80s, and sort of what that progression was. And it really is about like women's empowerment throughout it and how that evolved. And it's truly a historical sort of piece. There's a lot other things that go on. They have music and all this stuff. But my job on that show, before I was a key costumer, I did fittings forever, probably for about like 5 years for background. And there was so much navigating just human interaction. People are uncomfortable with their bodies. Even confident people walk in and you're like, how is that person not confident in their body? But like, it truly is an overall human nature thing to be like, oh, this thing, So I learned a lot how to just be like direct and strong with people in a way that made them feel comfortable, even if you don't feel that way sometimes. I was probably more nervous when I was making hats going into fittings than I ended up at the very end of my like fitting sort of stuff I was doing at that time. I was more confident going in with nudity stuff than I was with like hats, because it was really an acquired thing. You do it enough times, like people would like be excited to see me that I was their fitter, because they were like, oh, okay, it's the girl. It was like, yeah, have her come in. And I'd be like, okay, so what we're doing, lay it out, tell everyone what they're going to be in. And, and if someone doesn't feel comfortable with you, read the room. And you truly, it's like, it's so intimate. So just like read the room if they don't feel comfortable you being there. If it's a man and they need another male fitter, if it's, a woman and there's a male fitter present, just think about people and how you need to approach them, because we're all human, and a little kindness and directness and talking to people before I think sometimes wardrobe people can be very harsh, and it's because they've been doing it such a long time. They don't have intentions to be like, they come in and like, we all know this like wardrobe ladies who are like, just put it on and like whatever. And I think we need to remember that like there's a lot of things that we have to be conscious and aware of, but also do your research. And like doing your research is key. Like, you think you might not know how to approach a certain fitting or a situation, and you're looking at your schedule for the day. This is what we're talking about with community. Have people's in your phone number reach out and be like, have you ever like put on one of those paper, like a thong, like paper thong or pasties or anything like that? How do you remove them? How do you do all that stuff? That sort of stuff that like you can look online and research. And so then you're there making someone who, on top of like us putting a costume on them, they have to go out and act afterwards. They have to go out and like do things. And that is probably the difference between theater and film more so, is that you dress someone in a costume sometimes the day of, and then they have to go out and be in a scene. And at least in like theater, even though sometimes you're doing things up until the last minute, which we've all been there, like they have a little more time to think about what they're going to be in. And sometimes you're like, I'm so sorry, but this is what you're going to be in, and you're going to be in an hour. And don't talk the actor's ear off. Let them be in their space and their zone and do all that. That's all like really, but that's connection and intimacy and reading the room, I think,
Great. I want to ask you both a little bit about your process. And Anna, maybe we'll start with you. When you are, as a draper, when you're presented with a design, which is often a rendering with maybe some swatches on it, can you just walk us through what your process is from that point to when it's actually on the dancer's body?
Sure. So when a designer brings me a design, usually it is just a pencil drawing. Sometimes it's just a printed out picture. I want it to sort of look like this. Oh yeah, a lot of times we don't even get a drawing. We get make a prairie skirt, or we want a leotard with a thing. You get all kinds of things. So then it's my job to interpret, okay, we get a lot of fashion designers in the New York City Ballet. We do a fall fashion gala. So I get a lot of fashion renderings, which have the figures 6 feet tall. So then you have to proportion it for your dancer body. So I look at those things, I see, how full do we think this is? I might consult with my costume director about, is this a very active piece? How full should the skirt be? Do they need to get their leg over their head? Are there, what do we do? So we'll discuss a little bit about movement in that garment. And then usually I do, we call it a half form mock-up. So I do a mock-up, but only on the dress form, and usually only half the garment, the right or the left side. We'll send those photos of, usually in muslin, in all white generally, sometimes in the fabric. If the designer is ahead of the game and knows what fabric they want, we'll do it in silk, chiffon, we'll do it in whatever they want, a stretch. We'll send photos to the designer. The designer will respond with notes, a fuller sleeve, longer sleeve, shorter skirt, whatever they want, men's things too. And then we'll go straight to basically a sample. We'll usually try to cut it in the fabric or as close to the fabric as we're going to build it. And sometimes we will have a little mock-up fitting with a dancer and the designer there, and we'll just try out, how do we like how it moves? Is this skirt good? And the choreographer will also usually be there. So you have a sample fitting with a dancer, have them move around, take a video. Then usually the designer will make changes, alterations. We want a long sleeve, short sleeve, put an elastic here. A lot of times they've completely scrapped the design and started over again, or this, that, or the other thing. The choreographer doesn't like it. It will change every single step of the way. It will change. Once we finally get it nailed down to what we want them to be, then I start to pattern them for all the dancers. Usually in a ballet, there can be 12 people, there can be 2 people, there can be 35 people. So then I take that design, I pattern and size it for all of my different dancers, and then we cut them. We get fabric and we cut directly. We don't do, which is different than theater or live performance sometimes, we don't do mock-up fittings on each individual dancer. We go straight into the fabric. And then we go from there. We have fittings. The designer is in the fittings usually. Sometimes we have to Skype or video chat them in. Sometimes we just send photos. It's getting harder and harder, honestly, I would say, to get designers in the room. It's just become such a battle for us. A lot of times our designers are international. And so they will not just come to New York for some fittings here or there. And our dancer schedule and our fitting schedule is very limited. So we sometimes have a hard time. So technology has really changed how we do fittings. It's often, you're not all in the room together, which can be a challenge. And sometimes they're like, oh, looks good, great, go for it. And they don't, nitpick sometimes the way you can when you're in person. So then once we go through our round of fittings, the costumes are being sewn by our shoppers, or our stitchers. We usually only have 1 or 2 dress rehearsals, and then the ballet opens. It's a pretty fast turnaround. Some ballets we do in about 4 weeks, from design to completion. Very fast. Yeah.
It struck me that you said, you talked about going right into fabric, which I think anyone who has had experience in theater, and that sounds terrifying, is the reason that you have that confidence because you know the bodies so well, or what gives you that confidence to go right into the fabric?
Some of it is knowing our dancers because we've worked with them. We have a company. The dancers don't change usually. So we know our dancers very well. And the other issue is time. We just don't have time to make mock-ups for every single person and fit them and make sure they're right and then go back to the drawing board and do it. We have to be cutting right away. We have to be doing again, with dance costumes, you're making 25 of the same thing sometimes. Sometimes it's 25 individual costumes, but there's just not enough time. We just have to go fast. The amount of work we put out in a season we look, in the shop, we'll look back and just be astounded at how much work we did. So that's really it. It's just time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sasha, can you talk to us a little bit about the film and TV industry? So if you're starting on a new show or film, what are you thinking about? What's your kind of checklist and process as you get ready for that?
So it usually depends on the show. A lot of where I'm at now is I do just like the prep work. So like my job is less like in the shop anymore than it used to be. So, but still like you always have to do your research. So I have an upcoming show that we had started right before COVID that it was 1880s, and I probably hadn't done 1880s since college, since a lot of like opera things that I had done. So it's been a lot of like relearning, even for me, where I'm like, as a truck costumer, what I do is I go in after we've like prepped and had the line for the entire day. Like, okay, this is all the scenes we're doing today. These are the costumes that correlate with the scenes. I go in and I place them, and I'm gonna have to like tie ties. I'm gonna have to tie bow ties, cravats, do all your button pulls, and like, you know, all those sort of things that everyone needs refreshers on. People have been doing it forever. I mean, some of them, they don't need it. They're like, man, get out of my way to do it. But, you know, for me, like, I was in the 70s, there was a ton of 70s shows. So like at a certain point, I was like, I got this. Give me a 70s show and I'm on it. You know what I mean? And I did a couple 50s things in a row, and I was like, I got this too. I know how to get everyone in their girdles and tell them to hoist it up and all those things. But, you know, 1880s, I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and do my research. I rewatch films about, you know, that are even contemporary films that, you know, that people were doing for that time period. And those things are all like good refreshers, because you are a second pair of eyes. Like, even though you might feel like you're coming from like a wardrobe sense or something like that, you are a second. Sometimes it might just be you and a designer in a room, because the assistant has to be in another room with someone else and all those things. So I always try to know the history of the show that I'm working on. It's just makes me feel better. And, you know, you are a giant support system. It's a huge team making something small happen. So to me, like, it's always the research that I like to do for this point in my career. And like, how do the clothes go on? And never be afraid to ask questions too. If there's someone in the room who is smarter than you, I mean, I'm 34, I've been doing this since 2009. Like, I still ask questions, like, and I'm always amazed when other people are fearless to ask questions. It's a fearless thing to ask a question, to say you don't know, and then you learn once and you got it, you know? So that kind of stuff is really important to me for, you know, how I approach something like that.
Great. I want to ask you both another question. Is there a particular project or show that you've worked on in your career that sticks out as, you know, wow, that was something I'm really proud of? Anna, can we toss that over to you?
There are a few ballets that I'm really proud of. Like I had mentioned before, we do a fall fashion gala, which is was started a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I guess. The very first year we did it, I worked with Valentino. He came in the shop. I worked directly with him. I mean, he's in his 80s, bless him, making ballet costumes. And that, I mean, that was definitely a huge highlight for me, was working right with Valentino. His whole team was there, cutting lace. I'm literally standing there like hand cutting lace with tiny scissors to place on a bodice. And just so I was in fittings with him. That was really a wonderful experience. And then from there, I mean, we worked with a lot of Carolina Herrera. I've worked with Iris Van Herpen, who, if anybody, please Google her. Her work is, if you're a costumer or interested in clothing at all, her work is phenomenal. And we made some ballet costumes entirely out of small little cut shaped pieces of plastic that you sew together, layered like scales. Google this ballet. I want to say it's called Neverwear. It's an amazing piece. So that was truly an awesome experience. I mean, I can just look back. A lot of those ballets are beautiful. And then also the Balanchine ballets, the traditional ballets that we've done, the tutus are just gorgeous. Some really astoundingly beautiful costumes. We do the Nutcracker every year at Christmas time. And those costumes they knock me out every single time. They're beautiful costumes. So every step of the way in our season, I enjoy them, but really working with Valentino was like a super highlight of my life. Yeah. That was
Great,
it.
great. Sasha, anything you want to mention as something you look back on and think, wow, that was really amazing?
Well, I mean, I loved my experience on Boardwalk, and we made like super beautiful things. And as far as like looking back on that as a whole picture, it's incredible. For me personally, my sort of like nerd out moment was I got to work on The Irishman a couple years ago, and the costume designer Sandy Powell does beautiful work. She's a very Googleable person, and she's a true artist. And just being amongst that experience, I was like, I don't get starstruck because I'm not, good at that, but I was a huge like Goodfellas fan and like all that kind of stuff. And I was just looking around the room at many, many moments, and I was like, this is truly special. This is a truly special thing to at least just like dip my toe in and be a part of like a little bit. But I was just doing background on that. I wasn't making like, you could look at the stuff I did for Boardwalk and it's like 10,000 showgirl, headpieces and all kinds of stuff like that I love looking back on. For me personally, it was one of those like, oh, this is cool. This is why I do this. This is nice to have a little bit in the larger wheel.
I think it's really great and interesting that both of you chose interactions with particular artists as what was most meaningful rather than a project. I think that's something really great and interesting. I have to ask this question: how has COVID affected your work so far? Sasha, do you just want to jump in on that question as you sit in the CLOC costume shop?
Sure. Well, it's good. I have lots and lots of time to research for my show because I was only on it for 2 weeks before we got shut down. Not shut down forever, just shut down until we know when we can open up, and everyone's very excited to do it. And it's interesting. It's been a very good, like, the production I'm working with is like reaching out, and they're so, people in film really care about each other a lot and really want to make sure when we come back, like how things are going to change, at least like personal life, like whatever. I know I watched a lot of Netflix, I'm not gonna lie. But it was very cool to see how maybe we are rethinking some of the ways that we do things within my industry. I work like 14-hour days. That's really hard. And that does create a world where people might get sick or injured or whatever. And the industry has taken this huge opportunity to be like, how can we rethink things? And so many people are involved and concerned, from the top to the bottom, our union, everything. Everyone's really trying to sort of rethink a better way to approach things, which I know that, we're trying to do there. But regardless, then I am so lucky to have time to be here and go up and tackle the upstairs attic, which is stuff I like love to do, and I would never have had some unended time to sort of come and like do a cool project like that. That does bring me a lot of organizational joy.
Great. Anna, what's it been like for you at the ballet?
We've been closed since the beginning of March. We're also shut down. It also was announced that our fall season and our Nutcracker season have been canceled. So I will be unemployed through at least December. They're hoping to bring us back in January, but nobody knows, obviously. And one thing that was interesting I want to point out is that Sasha and I are in the same union. So the New York City IATSE Local 764 covers costumers and theatrical wardrobers in live performance as well as TV and film. So even though we're two very different methods of approaching costuming, we're both in the same union together. So yeah, we're just trying to find a way that we can bring everybody back safely. I don't know there's 18 people who work in my costume shop. We are pretty spaced out-ish, but we're in a very limited costume shops are small generally. You can't get 6 feet apart. We have 2 ironing tables. Everybody's got to share. So we'll have to see and navigate how all of that will work. So far, we haven't heard much, honestly, from my employer, and it's a little disconcerting that you go weeks and weeks without hearing anything from them, but at least my union's on it and we're well represented. So I have all confidence that we will be back when this is over. We just have to wait it out. But I will say the waiting is hard. And we're both on unemployment right now. I mean, trying to just make it work as best we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear it. One last question I want to put to both of you, and that is, if you could give a piece of advice to your 19 or 20-year-old self starting out in this world, what would it be? Sasha, do you want to start us off?
Well, I truly do believe, do your research. Be a Jack or Jill of all trades. No, don't be afraid, like I said, ask questions. Get close to people you admire that you're working with. They want to talk with you. They want to give advice. Don't be fearful of people who feel like they're like, oh, they're like a designer on something. They don't want to talk to me. Of course they want to talk to you, so just be helpful. As much helpful things that you can do or be a part of it, you will make these like amazing, long-lasting connections that you'll be so surprised how much people will want to help you in your career, and how they will, if you reach out to them, how they will like move mountains to support you and help you as well. So just, never be afraid to ask.
Great, that's wonderful advice. Anna, do you have any words of wisdom for the 20-year-old Anna Light?
My best advice, I think, would be very similar to what Sasha said, is like, be a nice person, be helpful, take initiative. And also, you also have to remember that the person you're working with now, whether you like them or not, may be the person who's going to get you the next job. So you can't afford to burn any bridges also. I mean, as you become more established in your career, you can definitely say like, that's a person I'm never going to work for again. And you can get a little more choosy about your jobs, but early on, you just really have to play to everybody. And I don't want to say like compromise yourself. Don't do that, obviously. But a lot of jobs, I mean, Sasha will agree, but a lot of jobs we've gotten are because of other people we know. Those personal connections literally will get you jobs. That's what's going to put food on the table every time, or who you know. And if you don't know somebody, you might text like when I get a new job or I'm working with somebody, hey, I text Sasha and Danielle and some of our other friends in the area. Hey, did you ever work with this person? Oh, this person was at CLOC that year. Were you there? Or have you ever met them? Are they nice? How are they? It's a small, small world. And so you need to be the best person you can be to put yourself in those positions for jobs, because you never want somebody to be like, oh, she was nice, but she was like, just, really didn't like, was just kind of mean, didn't really get along or whatever. You never want to lose a job because you were unkind at some point. So I would say that that's definitely true. Is really cultivate those personal connections as much as you can. With remaining true to yourself. I mean, obviously, if you're in a bad situation, get out of it in any way. But yeah, that's really what makes this industry run, is knowing people. Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been so lovely. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. Had a great time.
Thanks, Mark.
Great. And I'm sure Sasha, I'll see you soon since you're in the same building.
I wish I was there with you.
Me too.
Off the Clock is part of our larger series, Digital Clock. Digital Clock is made possible by a generous gift from Phil and Liz Gross. If you'd like to learn more about our programming or how you can become a supporter, visit us at collegelightoperacompany.com. Tune in again next week for another episode of Off the Clock.